All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I like to give all the honor, the praise, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. All right, this is the brother Barazal here with a lesson, and Lord willing, it's edifying. All right, so today's lesson will be entitled, This Walk is Serious. Okay, or something along those lines, right? Recently, you had a brother that was, got into an altercation, to say the least. Brother from Canada. I'm not gonna play the video. I may put it on the thumbnail. I'm sure most brothers, seen the video already, but I just wanted to kind of put in my input through the spirit, just going into, going on the highways and hedges, when we say that, we sacrificing our lives to do so, or putting our lives on the line, to do so, that's not to be taken lightly. It's not a joke. It's not something that we just say. We really going out there, putting our lives on the line for Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua. All right. So I'm going to get in Romans 12:1. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Yahweh, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto Yahweh, which is your reasonable service. There you go. And that's what we do week in, week out, man. All right. Going out there, you got people who, come after us. All right, who hate us, want to cause harm to us because, the word, offends them. All right. And ultimately, this has to be one of the things that, we go through as servants of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. We're not exempt from, from harm, things, happening unto us, because we understand that, this is what the prophets of old went through. People think, just because, you preaching the word of the Lord that, we're not, any harm, we're not in any danger or any harm or, things like that, which we have faith that the Lord will deliver us, right? But that's a part of, the trial. There's a part of the tribulation, that we go through as the men of the Lord, the fire, of adversity, right? And let me get that actually real quick. 1 Peter 4 and start at 12. It say, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. Yeah, kind. All right. The prophets of old went through it. All right. Yahushua, of course, Yahushua went through it. And as being, servants of Yahushua, followers of Yahushua, we're going to go through, similar, the similar troubles that he went through, just, being the only begotten son, of the Most High Yahweh. All right. Verse 13, it says, But rejoice inasmuch as you are partakers of Hamashiach's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. So we know that, whatever we, suffer, in this truth, there's a greater reward at the end, and what we go through is just, that's a part of, the work. All right. Getting in altercations, scuffles, even, throughout our camp, we've had, certain things happen, right? Altercations, right? Scuffles, right? Guns being flashed on us. All right. But hey, all through the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, brothers was okay. Brothers was delivered from those certain, situations that we went through. All right. So let's get the next precept. It's going to be Ephesians 5:15. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Yeah, kind. And, we got to continue to be more and more, circumspect, because of the times that we in. All right. As we getting closer to the end, closer to, the climax, of Jacob's trouble. All right. More and more people going to want to come against, the men of the Lord, the prophets, those who, believe in Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. All right. This truth ain't a joke. It ain't a game. All right. It's not just about, the honey. All right. This is a part of the bitterness as well. Us being scoffed at, scorned at. All right. People wanting to cause harm to us. All right. Call your jobs. All right. People wanting to put hell on you, divisions. Right. You being, separated from your family, friends, whatever the case may be. We all got to bear, our cross. You see? So this is just, this ain't, and another thing too, because we go into it, that's why, we consider the us being out there on the highways and hedges, likened unto the battlefield, right? Because you see these different camps, they come out there, with lawn chairs, right, with their women or children, things like that, like it's a, kickback, a picnic, a time to hang out. No. All right. Anything can happen out there. While we have faith, we believe that, of course, the angels are protecting us. All right. We still got to be circumspect. We got to treat it as, as such, right? That, as, us being out there, putting our lives on the line, for the sake of pushing out this truth, blowing that trumpet, and we're not sugarcoating nothing. All right. We're going out there rebuking. Okay. Directly going against this world. All right. And as we know, this world isn't with Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. All right. People cling on to Christianity, right? Traditions of men, Catholicism, Islam. All right. All these are accepted, throughout this world. But when it comes to, calling yourself a Hebrew Israelite, saying the Lord was a so-called black man, all right, saying that the so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, are the, true children of Israel, the people have a problem with that. They get offended over that. All right. And ultimately, they turn into demons, right? Like that specific guy, that attacked the brother from Canada, right? With the, the fake firearm or whatever you would say. The spirit of the Lord prevailed. The spirit of the Lord, was definitely had that brother, and that brother, he did what he had to do. All right. He did exactly what he had to do. All right. And that's also, can be a faith booster as well, because, we see that, that could have went left. All right. But seeing that, just him just saying, being a brother preaching in the names of Yahweh and Yahushua, right? Brother giving, double honors, right, to the apostles and elders at GMS. Okay. And, we were seeing a brother, right, like-minded brother, and he was delivered. All right. And that's a faith booster as well. All right. And that's why, the video, is, kind of, circulating as it is. Right. Many brothers doing lessons on it. All right. Because, hey, we coming into those times where, we got to rely on our faith. Right. The scriptures say the just shall live by faith. Let's get that. So yeah, this is Romans 1:17. All right, for therein the righteousness of Yahweh revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. Okay, and we believe that, the Lord, he gonna deliver us. Brothers gonna have spiritual power. Brothers, the spirit gonna be on brothers. To do the right thing. Whatever. Whatever they're up against. Because we're coming into a time like never before seen, as the scripture saith, right? Jeremiah 30:7, Daniel 12:1. Okay, so we gotta ultimately have our spirits ready. Okay, get one more precept, and I'm gonna close it out. So it's Matthew 5:10. It says, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." There you go. So, we coming into a time where, we'll be persecuted. And that guy, he could have very well been an agent, right? Agent provocateur, been set up, in order to, demonize, the ministry. All right. Demonize the brothers, the prophets. All right. A brother, out there on his own, that's how this devil operate, man. And, the brother, he handled it, very well, calm, collected. All right. And, when the opportunity presented itself, he neutralized the threat. See? Matthew 5:11. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. All right. And that's what it is, People call us, they say that we, worship a skin color. All right. Stupid things like that. All right. They say, hate group. All right. People just constantly, demonizing. All right. And especially Jake. Right. You got the, because the spirit is on the elder, Manata Sakba, putting out the videos of, just Jake just straight up scoffing, at the truth, and it's mainly Jake, because, that's who this truth is for, right? To wake up, the Israelites. All right. But we understand that, the majority of our people, they just gonna have to, be put to death and come back in the kingdom, right? Receive whatever judgment, they gonna get. All right. From Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and they, that's just what it is. All right. Now, verse 12, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Yeah, so none of this is new. The Christians think that just because, they're, the, more popular or whatever, you got, billions of Christians or whatever the number is, right? That they have the truth. No, the prophets, was beat up, put to jail, put to death. All right. Was hated by a lot of people. All right. So, and we're in the lot of the prophets today. Okay. Nobody's looking to, doing the harm to a regular Christian. No, that's what's accepted. Worst pagan holidays, not keeping the law. All right. Jesus. Right. That's what's accepted. But when you say the name Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, that's not accepted. All right. When you say that, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans are the true Israelites, that's not accepted. When you say, the law is not done away with, that's not accepted. All right. So that just go to show you, who got it and who don't. All right. And the plantation Christianity, man, that's been through. All right. But, you know, that'll do it with the lesson. And Lord willing, it was edifying. So with that, I like to give all the praise and glory unto Yahweh by Hashem Yahushua by Hashem. Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom.